Hello, hello. This is David again, getting into my chair. I'm going to have some fun this morning. I'm going to make a confession. I see you as my priest, as my bishop, as my rabbi. When I've done something wrong, I need to confess it. I need to repent, the old Mormon word. I wanted to make a video having to do with, excuse me, I'm gonna put my feet up. I love this job. Easy chair, feet up, Coke, potato chips. God, I'm in Mormon heaven. Anyway, here's what happened. And the reason I'm making this video, the human body that you and I are in, and the spirits that are around us, they're not in human bodies, but I'm not going to address them. It's me and you. It's extremely unique experience. I'm not going to say one of a kind, but extremely unique. The human container that we're in. We have never been exposed to fear. You and I have no experience concerning fear. The creatures that we are and the environments that we were created in had no area for fear. We always believed that we would exist, and there was no indication that we wouldn't. Creatures like us, we never saw die, or fade away, or be buried in the damn ground, turn into skeletons, and then turn into topsoil. You and I don't have any of that knowledge, background, or experience. When we got put into a human container called a human being body, suddenly we really got into an environment that we are totally unfamiliar with. We chose to go into a human container. We wanted the experience that the human body could bring to us as individual creatures. One of the things that we didn't know or understand and we wanted to learn about was fear. How do you learn fear unless you become human? So, one of the greatest fears, and we as humans in these bodies have a lot of fears. One of the greatest fears is survival. That's kind of the number one fear. And it's interesting because the creatures in the universe don't have any fear of survival. They know they're eternal creatures. Only you and I and those who come to inhabit the human body and container begin to understand and feel and know fear. Now, what does that mean? Well, over a lifetime, we have a lot of fears emotionally, mentally, financially, etc. What I want to kind of focus on and address today is, I have to admit for the first time to anybody, and please don't tell anybody else, this is just between me and you, I stole candy once from a baby, and I feel it's a sin. I hope I don't rot in hell and fire and brimstone and the devil poke me with a fork. Anyway, my video is titled, basically, I robbed candy from a baby. Now, how does this all intermix and how does it correlate? Well, I never, as a creature, before inhabiting the human body, understood fear of survival. I always knew that I would never die, that I would never be cease to exist. When I get put into the human container, suddenly I thought, wow, if I don't eat and I don't drink and I don't think about it, if I don't eliminate the poisons from the food every day out of this human body, the human body's going to fall over and die, go in the ground, rot, turn to a skeleton. And that's a brand new experience for me. I never even imagined that I would have ever the fear of non-survival. Well, welcome to being a human. So, here's my video. Please, don't tell anyone else. I'm ashamed that I did take candy from a baby. I used to be a bus driver. I drove a bus many, many years of my life. At BYU, to the ski resorts. I loved taking the snow bunnies up there from the BYU, beautiful girls and whatever. I was a charter bus driver. Well, I also was a school bus driver for years at different places. And a long story short, which is never true with me, that's the only lie that I ever tell, I worked for the Thousand Oaks, California school district. And I drove there what was then, in those days, called a Crown bus. It was the big boy bus. It carried 99 passengers. And I drove every morning and every afternoon, picking children up, delivering them to school, taking them home, dropping them off. I really enjoyed dealing with children. I have my whole life. I've owned daycare centers, I've driven bus. I really enjoyed working with children. I had one day, after delivering 99 children, I was starting to drive the bus back to the bus barn, and I looked in the mirror and I saw one little boy still on the bus. Shit, who's that kid? Why didn't he get off? I can't just leave him on the bus overnight in the bus barn. I have to be somewhat responsible. So I stopped. I called him up and I said, little boy. That was his name, little boy. Anyway, Mr. Little Boy, I found out later. Why didn't you get off the bus? And he said, I don't know. And I thought, well, that's not a very good answer, because that doesn't help me get him back to his parents. So I asked him the magic question, where do you live? And of course, he was 5, 6 years old. And he said, well, I live in California. I go, shit, that narrows it down. At least it's the state I know he's in. So anyway, a long story short, again, I love to say that because it's the only lie that I tell. I did find, taking him back to the school, we found his parents and whatever, and that was just kind of a sidelight, interesting thing for me to have a little boy say he lived in California, and now it was my job to find his address in Thousand Oaks, California. Well, I drove for several years, all through my younger years, different places, different school districts. One of the most interesting school bus jobs I had was Clark School for the Deaf in Massachusetts. I hauled deaf children to and from school. Fascinating experience. I'll maybe do a video on that someday. But anyway, in Thousand Oaks, one day, I was back from BYU. I used to have to leave BYU because I couldn't afford the tuition. My parents were working, middle-class people. My dad was a printer at a newspaper. My mom was a beautician. And we were, lower middle-class people. And I didn't have any money to go to BYU. I wanted a college education. I was the first in my entire genealogical background to go to college and actually graduate. So at times I would have to drop out of BYU and go back and live on my parents' floor in the living room, sleep. And I had a wife and one little girl. And the three of us slept on the floor in my parents' house while I was working at Thousand Oaks School District to earn money, to get tuition money, go back to BYU and get another tuition or another semester under my belt. Now, because I don't want to say we were poor, because I've been to the Philippines, I've been to third world country, and poverty and being poor was a very, very different thing there than being poor as an American. I was fasting. I didn't have enough money to pay for diapers, bottles, Infamil, and food while I was living on my parents' floor. So I went, I don't know, sometimes it would be 24, maybe even 35 hours without eating, and I would drink water, but I didn't have any food. I'd never been hungry before. That was a new experience for me in this container. Where I came from, we didn't eat. We self-generated our energy. So this was a new experience for me to feel in a body hunger pains, and then it would trigger worry. Where am I going to get my next meal? Where am I going to survive? If I don't get food, I somehow knew inside this container I would cease to exist. I would die. I never had those feelings or emotions ever. The human experience are now giving me that information. So I was driving bus back and forth, and I happened to have a day or two where I went without eating, and I was hungry. I was hungry as a human being. So at the end of the day, when you, in the morning when you drop the kids off, you have to go back and check the bus. Make sure there's no little boys on it that are still living in California, and for whatever, damage, trash, whatever, you kind of had to check coats and hats that were left, etc. Well, this one day, I delivered all the kids to school, and I have to admit, I took candy from a baby, but I feel bad. Even now, I'm 75 years old, and that experience was over 50 years ago, and it taught me, eternally taught me, a principle about hunger and the fear of survival. I thought I was a pretty moral guy. I thought that I loved my fellow men. I thought that I was trained in the Judeo-Christian Mormon culture to be honest, have integrity, and to do what's right. Let the consequence follow. That's a phrase in Mormonism. Anyway, I was hungry. And I went back to the back seat of the bus. And I'm ashamed. I hope someday I'll be forgiven, but I found one of the little boys or girls' lunch sack. And I drove in a nice area. Thousand Oaks is not a poverty area of California. Their bags had Twinkies in them, and they had sandwiches, and they had cookies, and they had apples, and they had everything. They were, gourmet sack lunches. Now, the policies and the procedures and my morality and my integrity and who I thought I really was in those days, I was in my mid-20s, early 20s, said, pick that little girl or boy's lunch up, take it into the school and tell them your route number and that one of the children left their lunch on the bus, and they'll find that little girl or boy and give them their lunch. That's what I was paid to do. That's what I promised to do as an employee. That's what I promised my church, if you want to call it the Mormon Church, that I would behave in a certain way. I didn't. I'm ashamed. I was hungry. Really hungry. I've never been hungry before. That experience began to test what my decisions would be under those circumstances. As long as I had a full lunch and a Big Mac, I was a good person. I was integrity. I was full of honesty. I was a perfect employee. But I was hungry. There's a saying that I believe, poor people have poor ways. That's a true principle. All right, I'm going to say it. Please don't tell anybody else. I sat down on the back bench of the bus and I ate that little child's lunch. I took candy from a baby. When I was done, I felt good. I didn't feel hunger anymore, and the fear of preservation and the fear of passing on or going away and my body dying left me. It was gone. But what did I do? What did I do to get rid of that fear? Suddenly, nothing made any sense, or nothing was important to me. All of my morality, all of my background, all of my training, all of my education, all of my experience meant nothing. I was hungry. I saw food and I ate it. Boy, did I learn a lesson then and even now. 75 years old, and now I know, if I ever get hungry again, there's a very good possibility I would steal food. I didn't know that about being human. Where I came from, those kinds of experience never came up. You couldn't even fantasize that kind of an experience. That all of your training, morality, background, experience would disintegrate simply because the fear of preservation. Wow, what a lesson. What a lesson. You and I are in a container that has taught us an extremely important lesson that we could have never got anywhere else in the universe except in a human being body container. It has the ability to give us the fear of survival. Now, that taught me a lot about me. That taught me a lot about weakness. That taught me a lot about fear. That taught me a lot about if someone threatened my life or they were going to torture my children or my wife or whatever, what side of the line would I really be on? I did fail taking candy from a baby. Could I fail in another area of fear for my own life, of throwing other people these days under the bus? That possibility haunts me as a human. I don't want to ever be that way again. I don't know if I've changed enough that if I was really, really hungry and you put a sack lunch of a 5-year-old in front of me, would I steal? That's what I did. Would I covet? That's what I did. Did I take advantage of of another human being, someone weaker than me? Yeah, I did. Is that still part of me? Can I ever get rid of that? Do I always have to live now with the knowledge and the fear that when I was hungry, nothing mattered? It was just food. Hopefully, I've changed a little bit. But if you tortured me, if you put, I'm not going to go into details, if you tortured me, and you go ahead and imagine how torturing you, would I finally give up and say, give me the lunch, shoot my child, rape my wife, this hurts too much? What an experiential environment we have chosen to put ourselves into, allowing ourselves to be put in these human containers, bodies. Now, there are other fears that we are experiencing and learning. I'm going to put those in other videos. So this will be kind of a short video, and that's okay because you know me, there's no such thing as a short story. I did steal a 5-year-old child's lunch and secretly ate it and secretly never told anybody until today. Now I've told, what is it, 4 or 5 million people? I don't know. I don't watch my numbers and statistics anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I'm bipolar. I don't give a shit if you watch me or you don't. If you like me, you don't. I don't care. What I care about is me, that I was ashamed that I did steal candy from a baby. I hope I'm a better person now, 50 years later. I hope that maybe I would just eat half the sandwich and then take the other half into the school. I don't know. Would I take the whole lunch into the school? I hope so now. But I don't know. I haven't been hungry since then. So I don't know. Did I learn? Did I not learn? I had the opportunity to learn. It's my decision whether I want to integrate and make that experience part of my creativity of a creature. So, if you ever have a chance to steal a lunch, I'm advising you don't do it. You're going to wait 50 years and then have to tell 5 million people that you stole a kid's lunch because you were hungry. What about the kid? Did he miss lunch? No. In Thousand Oaks, it's a rich community, and they make lunches for kids that didn't have a lunch. So he didn't suffer. I did because of my behavior, my thought pattern, and my decision. No one put a gun to my head and said, you eat that lunch. I made the decision myself, and I have to accept the consequences and the responsibility that I had a lesson put in front of me, and in those days, I failed it. So, watch out for the fear of the human existence that you and I are both in, that we need to survive. We have to have air. We have to have food. We have to be able to regenerate our bodies all day long to stay alive. You and I have never experienced that before. That is new. And that's why we make a lot of bad judgments, because we're not used to that fear. We're learning that fear, and we're learning how to deal with that fear. But when I see the homeless and I see poverty in the Philippines and other places in the world, those people live all day long with the fear of their demise. I never understood when I was in the Philippines why people stole everything and all the time. You couldn't put anything anywhere without the Filipino people stealing it. And I thought, well, are they just dishonest? Do they just have no morality? Do they just not want to work? I've discovered they were hungry. Did I do the same thing when I was hungry? I did. I stole a lunch. A Filipino stole my daughter's raincoat off the motorcycle. He probably sold it for rice. He was hungry. So, take it or leave it. That's my experience. I feel that a huge burden has been lifted off of my shoulders that I've confessed, and I'm trying to be better. If you ever want to test me, put a sack lunch and a note. This is a 5-year-old sack lunch. Put it by my door, and when I open the door, I'm going to see if I can resist the temptation of being an ass and being a thief and being a beggar and being a creature that concerns myself more with my existence than the comfort and the survival of another human being. That little lunch was made for another human being to survive. I stole that lunch so that I could survive, and I didn't care. I hate to say it. If he or she went hungry, I hate to say it, I didn't care. Isn't that terrible? It is. It is. Anyway, my confession is over. I'm going to publish this on Cockroach and Sir David the Bard, and do with it what you may. And if you ever see me in this life or the next, we might all meet in hell. I don't know. Anyway, if you see me, if you want to spank me for stealing a kid's lunch, I'd like that. I really like being spanked. That would make up for the guilt that I feel. So, if you want to spank the Bard, put it in your comments. Fight with each other. I don't care. I just need to confess. I feel better. Thanks for watching. The Fat Bard is getting out of his chair. The end.